country and society, among all the oppressed sections, the most vulnerable, abused, and neglected communities are the transgender people. Even today, if the entire community is denied the recognition and dignity, we must be ashamed of the society we are living in. But unfortunately, that is the reality we are continuing to live with. In such a situation, the government has introduced the new amendment to the law related to transgender rights. And this amendment has sparked widespread outbreak among the social organizations, social activists, and the transgender activists. So what does the new amendment actually say? Let's get all the answers. Welcome to Youturn, and this is Nandini Madheshwaran. The biggest concern raised with the new amendment is it interferes the very definition of who the transgender person is. Critics argue that this is one of the dangerous moves, and the law even has the potential to criminalize the transgender individuals instead of protecting them. Now, what exactly are the changes introduced in the new amendment? Let's look in detail. There is a law called the Transgender Protections Act of 2014, and this law was introduced based on the landmark judgment by the Supreme Court in 2014 in the case of National Legal Actions Authorities versus the Union of India. In this judgment, the Supreme Court directed the government to introduce the new law to protect the rights of the trans people. And this judgment was popularly known as Nalsa judgment. But in the new amendment of 2026, it made significant changes in the definition of trans people. In the 2019 Act, the definition was based on self-perceived gender identity. That means a person's gender identity is determined by how they feel themselves. For example, if a person is assigned male at birth and in future when he turns or when he recognizes himself as woman, then the society must respect him with dignity as women. And this principle of self-identification was the key feature of the 2019 law. The law also included a broad range of identities such as trans men, trans women, persons with intersex variations, and queer persons, individuals like those who cannot identify themselves strictly as male or female, or those with fluid identity. However, the new amendment removes the concept of this self-perceived gender identity. Instead, it introduced that the trans person must undergo medical examination and they should possess the medical or doctor certificates. Once after the doctor certificate is provided, then the certification must be submitted to the district magistrate, and only the district magistrate can officially approve them as a transgender people. So, this is the core issue now. To understand this simply, imagine if someone asks you to prove whether you are a man or woman by undergoing some medical examinations. Wouldn't that feel insulting or invasive? Similarly, forcing the transgender people to undergo some medical examination whether to prove their identity is obviously seen as the violation of dignity. Another major problem is that there is no definitive medical test to determine the gender's identity of a person. So, gender identification is not purely based on biological. It also relies on psychological and personal factors. So, relying on medical tests alone can lead to wrongful rejections of genuine transgender individuals. Critics argue that this creates a system where the transgender individuals may be neglected from their legal protection and their benefits and rights. But why is this recognition very important? Because most of the government welfare schemes, education schemes, healthcare schemes, and the gender identifying schemes are related to this transgender certificate. And if this transgender certificate is rejected, then their essential benefits would also be rejected. Another major concern is the role of authorities. Under this new amendment, the medical board must first recommend the individuals. Then the district magistrate approves or denies the recommendation. And there is no proper criteria or definition whether the magistrate rejects or approves the individuals. And this paves the way for the misuse of act. Additionally, transgender individuals are the most vulnerable and often rejected by their families and communities. Many are forced to leave their home and seek help from the transgender communities, NGOs, or the groups led by senior transgender persons. And the new amendment says if someone is accused of forcing the person to turn into a transgender, then they may be punished even with the lifetime imprisonment. While looking at the surface, this may look very protective, but activists argue that this may lead to the misuse of the act. For example, if a person seeks help from the community or NGO, their family could falsely accuse them those of forcing the transition. This could lead to the harassment and punishment of the support system that are crucial to the transgender individuals. As a result, individuals who are genuinely identify themselves as transgender may be forced to live accordingly with their assigned genders due to their fear and lack of support. Another major criticism is that while most of the transgender individuals face violence, abusiveness, and lack of employment, lack of education and housing in the society, instead of protecting them or ensuring the welfareness of them, this amendment doesn't introduce any strong measures to solve the real life issues. Instead of addressing these real life issues, the law enforces mostly on regulating and controlling the gender identities. Even under the existing 2019 law, many protections have not been implemented properly. Cases of abuse and violence often go unpunished. In summary, critics says that this amendment affects the transgender people in three ways. First, it shifts the gender identity being self-determined to controlled by the authorities. And second, it makes the medical verification mandatory, ignoring the personal identity. And the third, it introduces high penalty over the people who are supporting or working with the transgender community. International human rights standards and the Supreme Court's judgment of 2014 clearly states that the gender identity must be identified by the individuals and not by any medical test. Global guidelines like the Yogyakarta principles also clearly stated that no individual must be forced to do any medical procedures to just recognize their identity legally. But ignoring all these principles, the amendment has been introduced, and that is why it is facing strong opposition. Even advisory bodies linked to the Supreme Court have also reportedly raised concerns and urged the government not to pass the changes. Transgender organizations have also stated that they are prepared to challenge the amendment legally. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.